Hi, I'm Harsha Alapati, and today I'm going to present a new offering in data security and compliance space so that you can govern your data for security, privacy, and compliance. Let's get started. Data has become an extraordinary asset for all enterprises. Collecting enormous amount of data from various touch points, democratizing it, and driving innovation with AI, ML, and analytics has almost become an essential business function. There lies the challenge. Data offers both risks and rewards. It's important to balance the risks to gain the rewards. What is at stake if you don't do that? The data risks are real. In year 2024, the data breaches increased significantly. These threat actors are using aggressive techniques, double extortion, triple extortion. The cost of failing to prevent these data breaches is non-trivial. I'm referring to personal liability. But is this applicable to my organization, my industry? Do I need to worry about it? The answer is yes. Irrespective of the industry and the type of the workload, you have to manage these data risks. Depending on the size of the organization and whether your industry is under regulatory purview, the requirements might change. Let's start with the financial services industry. If you are operating in financial services industry today, it is very highly likely that you have to meet certain regional banking regulatory requirements. Example, monitor and review privileged access to sensitive data in 48 hours. You have to make sure that your retail customer data is protected from accidental sharing for PCI DSS and DORA. You have to manage data residency and data protection for retail customer data. And these requirements change as you move from one region to another region. Example, European Union banking audit requirements versus Monetary Authority of Singapore audit requirements. Likewise, if you're operating in healthcare industry, you have to make sure the patient data is used for restricted purposes only. As an example, when a pharma company shares patient records with several agencies, they have to make sure that patient records are only used for research purposes, nothing else. You have to meet data protection and data retention requirements. HIPAA mandates patient data should be retained for 6 years. If you have any AI ML workloads, you have to make sure sensitive data is not accidentally leaking to the training environments. This is a very, very big problem. You need controls to prevent that. And you have to make sure your IP, the models, the weights are protected from exfiltration. You need compliance explainability for all your models in production so that you can reason about what data these models are trained on with complete data bill of materials. But the challenge is, today there is no single point solution to address these variations of requirements, even for the few requirements that we just went through. Unfortunately, the current data security and posture management solutions, DSPM, fall short as they lack the depth and breadth of capabilities required to address these requirements. As you can see here, with the current solutions, while they shine in few areas such as coverage across the data stores, out-of-the-box access intelligence, they lack the key capabilities such as data controls to secure your data and monitor those controls. That leaves the gaps in your data posture and makes your data vulnerable to all sorts of risks. To address that exact problem for our customers, we're excited to announce Data Security and Compliance Posture Management as a beyond DSPM offering from Google Cloud. A first of its kind by any cloud provider, we're announcing in preview as part of Security Command Center. Our vision with this product is to bring security and compliance to the data wherever it is, GCP or elsewhere. Provide comprehensive coverage across security, privacy, and compliance use cases. Let me walk you through how we're executing on the vision. The journey for data governance for security and compliance has three major steps: discover, secure, and monitor. Starting with discover, we are bringing Google Maps-like experience to data with what we call data map. With that, you can find the answers for what data do I have and where is it. And once you discover the data, the next step is secure. This is where the beyond DSPM capabilities start. We're offering data controls as a library that exposes the platform capabilities as controls so that you can protect your data. With that, you can codify your requirements as policies and apply across the infrastructure. And these controls are available as cloud controls with data frameworks. Let's dive into the secure part. The user journey for secure starts with identifying the sensitive data that is in scope for a specific outcome and creating an implicit boundary around it. For that, today users can use coarse grain, org, folder, project, or fine grain filters such as sensitivity, location, tags for identifying the boundaries. Once these boundaries are identified, the next step is to map the requirements to control policies. The controls that you see here: data access, data flow, data retention, data protection, AI controls, and purpose-based access, or advanced data controls that are tailor-made for specific security and compliance outcomes. And these controls can be applied in detective or preventive mode on the identified implicit boundaries. In the detective mode, users will get alerts for any non-compliant operation. And in preventive mode, these operations are prevented from happening. And once applied, these policies follow the data wherever it goes. Let me go through each of these controls. Data access governance. Using data access governance, you can restrict the access to sensitive data to allowed principles. Let's say there is an enterprise that collects customer payment card information, and the organization has a compliance requirement to only allow access to payment card information in plain text only to the fraud detection team. As an admin responsible for implementing the policy, I start with managing this with identity and access management, the IAM. This is the right place to start. But soon I realize the policies quickly drift as the data evolves. Data gets copied, replicated, and processed. Very quickly, it becomes unmanageable for me to track data continuously to find where the relevant data is and make sure the access policies are compliant. And you can solve this exact problem with data access governance control. With access governance control, you can define a policy that says only allow fraud detection team to access the data sets with the customer payment information, the implicit boundary, and apply in detective or preventive mode. And the control will do the rest. Once the policy is applied, as the data evolves, the data is brought into the implicit boundary and policy is applied automatically. The next control is data flow governance. Using data flow governance control, you can restrict the flows of data to certain boundaries. Let's say there is an enterprise with operations in Switzerland. The organization has a compliance requirement to not move the Swiss citizen customer data outside Switzerland. As an admin, to implement that policy, I start with identity and access management, IAM. Only allows Swiss employees to access, assuming that they always access from within Switzerland, but quickly realize they do travel and access from outside Switzerland, violating the policy. As the next step, I resort to perimeter-based solutions and I realize they are not suitable for the use case. Left with no choice, I lock down the entire data instance, making it unavailable even for the valid use cases. You can solve this exact problem with data flow governance. You can define a policy that says only allow access from Switzerland and apply to the data sets with Swiss citizen customer information, the implicit boundary, in detective or preventive mode. Also in future, we plan to extend the support to logical boundaries, such as organization, folder, or project, so that you can control the flow across these environments and prevent potential exfiltration attempts. The next control is data retention control. Using data retention control, you can manage the historical depth of the data for the maximum retention and minimum retention periods. Let's say you're an enterprise with GDPR compliance requirement to delete the customer data within 90 days after customer unsubscribes or requests to delete the data. For that, you can define a policy with maximum retention period of 90 days and apply for the customer data the implicit boundary in detective mode. Likewise, if you're an enterprise with a HIPAA compliance requirement to retain the patient data records for 6 years, it define a policy with minimum retention period of 6 years and apply for the patient data records, the implicit boundary, in detective mode. The control will do the rest. The next one is the data protection control. Using data protection control, you can manage the encryption key configuration for properties like key rotation period, location of the keys, or segregation of duties. As an admin, I can create a policy with a key rotation period of 90 days and location of keys to be certain location and apply on the keys that protect the data in the implicit boundary. So far, we have seen data access, data flow, retention, and protection controls. But let me stress this again. Only GCP can offer these controls as it requires deeper platform integration. Once these data controls are deployed with frameworks for specific outcomes, the next step is monitoring. Users can use monitoring to manage the health of the deployed frameworks near real time and remediate. With that, we have gone through discover, secure, and monitor steps and how you can use the beyond DSPM capabilities to govern the data for security and compliance successfully. But that's not the end. We have one more thing to offer. We're introducing data security and compliance posture management natively within BigQuery Security Center. With that, BigQuery admins can discover, secure, and monitor BigQuery assets using the same beyond DSPM capabilities that we have gone through within the BigQuery Security Center. We're excited about the possibilities here to serve the BigQuery admins in future. With that, a few of you may be wondering about the tools that you're already invested in to protect assets outside GCP. For that, we are supporting integration with third-party security vendor products so that you can use Google Data Security and Compliance Posture Management as a central console to protect your assets across the spectrum. We're starting with these 3 vendors and planning to add more in future. With that, please reach out to your GCP team to find out more on data security and compliance posture management offering. Thank you very much.